Okay, so the Inferno is very different from most stories we've told on here. So I'm going to give a quick 30-second intro. The Inferno is part of a much larger work called The Divine Comedy by the Italian poet Dante Alighieri. Dante is both the author and the main character, with the line between the two getting pretty fuzzy. It was written in the Middle Ages, and it's ripe with allegory and hidden meaning. Dante blinked awake. Something was off. He didn't remember falling asleep in a dark forest that was an allegory for his own separation from God. Few do, but here he was, walking through a dark forest that was an allegory for his own separation from God. Dante had never been in a story with a hidden meaning before, and he lacked supplies and provisions for the long journey ahead. Did people even need to eat in an allegory? Dante shrugged. He figured he would find out. Looking around, in a development that Dante thought was a bit much, even for a medieval allegory, he had lost the true path, and was now very much lost in the dark woods. He pressed through the trees of the suffocatingly dark forest, emerging at last into the sunlight. There, before him, he saw a shining hill. Dante smiled. If the dark forest where one lost the true path represented his separation from God, then a shining hill, the exact opposite of a dark forest, had to be a step in the right direction. This allegory stuff was easy. He started climbing the steep hill, an undertaking made all the more difficult by his 14th century flowing Italian garb and sandals, and also by the vicious leopard that had appeared and was now swiping at him, mere inches from his face. I'm Jason Weiser. From Bardic, this is Fictional. Dante hightailed it back down the hill and sat at the bottom. Okay, note to self. The dark forest was bad, hill good, but a leopard? This was quickly becoming confusing and difficult. Also somewhat related, both a lion and a vicious she-wolf had arrived, and neither looked happy to see him sitting there. Faced with 3 apex predators blocking his way and threatening to disembowel him right there on the Mount of Joy, as it's called, Dante wasted no time debating options before booking it off in the opposite direction, back toward the labyrinthine forest, and leaving the 3 hungry beasts pacing by the hill. An hour later, panting amid the trees, Dante began to despair. No matter how hard he tried to fake out the beasts on the hill, or go around the hill, or distract them with throwing sticks, they wouldn't move. He was trapped in the forest. Then things went from bad to weird to possibly worse, when, there before him, materialized a ghost. Hi. Who are you? Dante asked. I was a Roman who lived in the time of Augustus, who wrote about Aeneas after he fled from Troy, the apparition said. Oh, who is the poet Virgil? Right you are, Virgil said. Basically, I'm his shade. I'm like him, but in ghost form. Okay, wow, I'm your biggest fan, Dante spilled. Oh, well, thank you. It's always nice to meet a fan, said Virgil. You're lost, and I've been tasked with guiding you through hell itself. Virgil went on to explain that Dante couldn't climb the Mount of Joy because of the animals that blocked his path, which, of course, represented sins. The lion was the sins of violence, the leopard, fraudulence, and the she-wolf was incontinence, but the lack of self-restraint kind, not the diarrhea kind. These sins blocked Dante's path up the hill, so he had to go through hell in order to make his way back to God. Dante looked at the animals snarling on the hill, and then down into the darkness, stretching toward hell. Neither was a great option, but there was really only one way. Lead on, Dante said to Virgil, and together they made their way into the darkened valley. Immediately, Dante began having doubts that he was even worthy of such a trip. Only 2 before him had ever made it and returned, St. Paul and Aeneas, who definitely wasn't just a fictional character in Virgil's work. Virgil revealed that it wasn't he who had made the decision to come find Dante, lost in the forest, but that it was a woman named Beatrice, who had descended from heaven into hell when she saw Dante's suffering. She had asked Virgil to lead Dante on a voyage of discovery and redemption through the depths of hell itself. Moved by her pity, Virgil agreed, and here they were. Virgil asked if the name Beatrice rang any bells. Dante admitted that Beatrice was, indeed, a girl he had met back when he was 7, and that he had stayed in love with basically forever, despite her marrying someone else when she was 21. and dying at just 24. He had only talked to her twice in his life, but Dante would go to her part of town and creep around, apparently making her the symbol of divine grace. You know, normal childhood crush stuff. Virgil turned. So you met twice, and she married another man. You think you'd even be on her anachronistic radar at this point? Well, she did come asking about me. So, you know, Dante countered with a smile. Yeah, but you wrote this, Virgil pointed out. You know what? Never mind. We're just going to keep going. A few hours later, Dante read the words on the gate before him. Only those elements time cannot wear were made before me, and beyond time I stand. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Dante stroked his chin. Now what could that mean? Ghost Virgil looked at him. We just talked about this. These are the gates to hell. And I'm pretty sure abandon all hope, ye who enter here is a pretty self-explanatory sentence. Anyway, you're going to want to cover your ears. The moment Dante crossed the threshold of the gate, he was hit with a cacophony of screaming, crying, and yelling in countless languages. He also lost sight of Virgil almost instantly, and a black haze enveloped him. Quite disoriented, Dante lost the gate behind him and stood frozen in the darkness, surrounded by wailing. Also, something was moving at his feet. Then, in the distance, was that a light through the haze? It was Virgil. Dante approached, but something wiggled beneath his sandals. Looking down, he nearly vomited. The ground was coated with worms and maggots, sucking hungrily on his open-toed footwear. Dante screamed and kicked, but they wouldn't die. Virgil put his hand on Dante's arm and told him to relax. Here they come. Hardly visible amidst the darkness, Dante watched the banner pass, and then a crowd of people streamed past in hot pursuit. This mass of people seemed never-ending. Still worse was what hovered above. In the sky above the crowd swarmed a cloud of wasps and hornets, stinging the people constantly. The crowd wept and bled, and those that had been there the longest were covered in pus-filled sores. All that dribbled down and fed the worms. Dante just stood there in horror. Virgil, man, this is really messed up. Hell is raw, Dante said. Ha! No, I mean, yes, hell is raw, but oh my gosh, it gets so much worse you have no idea. I mean, we aren't even in hell proper yet. These are just the people that didn't pick a side. They didn't choose God, but they didn't reject him either. They were opportunists, following their own ever-shifting banner and running from their own guilty conscience. Oh, thus the banner they chased in the dark and the hornets hovering over them. That makes sense, Dante said. Yeah, you'll see a lot of that down here, Virgil said. It's called the law of symbolic retribution. The punishment down here fits the crime in creative and horrifying ways. All of it's forever, too, so fun times. The two-person tour moved on, through the black haze, the screams already fading behind them. They came to the river Acheron, and the ferryman Charon. Wait, Charon, Dante said. Isn't he from Greco-Roman mythology? Yeah. So? Virgil asked. Well, this is supposed to be the Judeo-Christian hell. Charon ferried the dead to the Greek underworld, the realm of Hades. It seems, I don't know, weird that clearly pagan elements would make an appearance here. Look, Virgil said, it's the 1300s, Rome is all the rage again. Some things are going to find their way in. Let's just try to have a good time and not think too much about it. Dante was going to follow it up, but someone was clearly unhappy that he was here. Nope, he can't come, the pair heard. They saw Charon raise from his boat, like a demon, eyes glowing red and swatting with his oar at the dead people boarding his ferry. Sorry, Charon, he's coming across, Virgil said. No, he's living. I don't take living people across. Virgil, we talked about this, Charon said. I know, but I have orders from the higher-ups. Higher-ups. But really, I do. Charon laughed. I see what you did there. But really, who said he could come across? The Virgin Mary herself? Virgil said. Oh, okay, yeah, that's pretty high up, Charon agreed. All right, he can come aboard. Great, Virgil said. All right, Dante, you heard the super scary demon. You can... Oh, you fainted. Which means I get to carry you aboard. Awesome. A thunderclap woke Dante, who leapt to his feet with a start. He almost barreled right over the edge of the cliff, too. Virgil greeted Dante and told him that they were on the edge of a conical valley, called the Dolorous Abyss that plunged down and down into the darkness, containing all 9 circles of hell. The circles went from least to greatest in terms of sin intensity, with 1 being the lightest of the sins and 9 being the heaviest. Dante felt well rested, though he kind of felt like he had been dragged a few hundred feet. Also, where'd that river go? Virgil told him not to worry about it. They were at Circle 1, which also happened to be Virgil's home, the Circle of Virtuous Pagans. There's a lot of Christian theology stuff we're not going to get into, but some writers believe that people who lived before the time of Christ and thus had no opportunity to learn about him or grace might have a chance to go to heaven. Other writers, like Dante, subscribe to a more absolute way of thinking, where those individuals still go to hell, but instead of the more torturous circles, they just get to live in eternal hopelessness, which is better, I guess? It's described not as a circle of screams, but a circle of sighs. They're kept in what I can best approximate to a nice library with just hints of fire and brimstone, though it seems, in Virgil's case at least, that they can get day passes to the world of the living. Virgil, having lived in the time before Christ, never had the opportunity to learn of him, so Circle 1 is his home, alongside the great poets of the ancient world. They're the master souls of pagan antiquity, as Dante calls them, like Julius Caesar, because apparently overthrowing the Roman Republic isn't so bad, in addition to Electra, Aeneas, Socrates, Plato, Hippolyte, and others. Anyway, I can't even begin to wrap my mind around what happens next. In addition to Virgil, Dante ran into 4 more of his literary heroes. Homer, who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, Ovid, who wrote Metamorphoses, Horace, a Roman poet in the time of Augustus, and Lucan, another great Latin poet. They stood chatting for a while, until Virgil nodded and the other poets, who had formed a club of basically the best writers of all time, invited Dante to be the 6th of their number. Yes, that's right, Dante wrote himself in as the 6th greatest writer of all time. I'm just going to leave that one there. Dazzled by the first circle, Dante knew that heaven had to contain even more wondrous things. But first, they would have to go through the darkness, to the land of weeping and gnashing of teeth. Dante left his heroes, well regarded by them, but probably hoping he'd never see them again. They stepped out of the light and into the kingdom of eternal night. Look, whatever, King Minos said, but if I get written up, I'm gonna come looking for you, Virgil. Good, fine, whatever, Virgil said. Let's go, Dante. Was that really King Minos? Dante asked Virgil, once they were beyond earshot. Also, more Greek mythology stuff? We're not gonna talk about the Greek mythology stuff. It's here. Get over it, Virgil said. But yeah, he's King Minos, the Greek king of Crete who commissioned the labyrinth to imprison the Minotaur. Anyway, he was changed into a monster, as happens from time to time, and now judges the incoming dead to determine which circle of hell they'll go to, based on their sins. His tail wraps around his body, and you count the rings. But Dante wasn't listening. He was staring at the tornado of naked people. They had arrived in Circle 2. Virgil understood. Oh, yep. This is an interesting one. This is the carnal circle of hell. These are people who abandon themselves to various lusts, appetites, and passions. Their torture is to be forever whipped around in a tempest, thrown around in darkness, forever. Oh, like someone caught up in lust, Dante said. Yeah, very astute, Dante, Virgil said. Virgil pointed out some of Circle 2's well-known denizens, including Helen of Troy, Paris, also of Troy, and Achilles from the Iliad, as well as Dido, not the singer, and Cleopatra, also Tristan, from the Arthurian legends. Virgil was apparently able to stop people, and Dante was curious about 2 people he saw circling sadly together. Dante yelled out that, if they wouldn't mind, would they just tell him their extremely tragic, dark sin that led to an eternity of sadness and torment? Also, hi, my name is Dante. While they weren't exactly happy to, the pair did enjoy the brief respite of not being whipped around in a human tempest. So they told their story. They were Paolo and Francesca, who were lovers, but as you can probably guess, they were not married. She was married to Paolo's brother, but they would get together to read the story of Lancelot, the one where Lancelot, the handsome young knight, strikes up an affair with the queen. They stopped at one part in particular, and though the pair still got together regularly, there was no more reading. They ended up down here because, well, Francesca's husband and Paolo's older brother found them one day, not reading, and he had a sword on him. Wait, did he just faint? Paolo asked, looking at Dante. Virgil turned. Yeah, he did. All right, thanks for telling your story, guys. I'll pop in and say hi on my trip back. Virgil said as he picked up Dante's legs and began dragging him to Circle 3. I should mention that there was some political stuff in that last circle. In fact, there's stuff that relates to the politics of 14th century Florence in a lot of these circles. I'm leaving them out. Compared to the rest of the poem, they are extremely boring. And if you know the references well enough to miss them, well, you probably don't need me to poorly communicate them to you. Moving on. Oh my gosh, what is that smell? Dante questioned, opening his eyes. Wait, did I faint again? Yes, Virgil said. Oh, sorry. Ugh, what's on my face? Yeah, welcome to Circle 3, Virgil said, covering his own face. I don't mean to be rude, I just don't want to breathe here. Dante looked around and nearly vomited, again. This place had the smell of a diaper left out in the trash over the summer. And it was everywhere. Dante shivered and wished he had worn better footwear because it was quite slushy. All around him, filth rained down from the sky. Cold, snowy filth. It was black and brown and stinky. Oh, and all around him were backs and butts. It was a field of backs and butts as far as the eye could see. The denizens of Circle 3 were freezing and trying to avoid the snow and rain. Unfortunately, they were also naked. And the only refuge from the wind and falling filthy snow was the accumulated filthy snow. So the inhabitants laid face down in the muck, bloated and feeling pretty horrible. Dante noticed some of them had deep gashes on their back, and, looking further, saw 6 red, glowing eyes emerging from the disgusting slate. It was Cerberus, the 3-headed hellhound, coming right for them. We're in no danger, right, Virgil? Virgil, right? Dante said. But Virgil was steeling himself to scoop up some of the disgusting refuse and to make the world's, or underworld's, smelliest snowball. Not now, Dante, Virgil yelled. Time's a factor, and if you say Cerberus is from Greco-Roman mythology and not technically part of the Christian hell, I swear, I won't. Just do whatever you're going to do. It looks important, Dante said. Cerberus was barreling toward the pair, and Virgil, at the very last moment, threw a ball of muck past the 3 heads, and, being dog heads, they couldn't resist, and took off after the smelly ball. Virgil apparently had a great throwing arm. While the 3 dog heads dug around, fighting each other and looking for the ball, Virgil and Dante took the opportunity to quickly move on through Circle 3. As they slogged through, Dante wondered what these people did to deserve this. Virgil nudged one of the sufferers, who simply looked up and said, "Gluttony," before burying his face in the relative warmth of the muck. Dante started, "Oh, like they wallowed in self. You know what? We can just talk about it later. I just want to get out of here as fast as possible," forced to mouth breathe. "Deal," Virgil irked out, and they continued trudging along. Once Dante finally stopped vomiting, they saw him and walked right past him. "Who is that guy?" Dante asked. Virgil said that it was Plutus. "Oh, Pluto?" Dante said. "No, Plutus. He's from Roman mythology, god of wealth and other stuff. Look, we don't have to worry about the guards or anything between the circles, and he'll just stand there and yell at us if we try to talk to him, so we're just going to keep going." "Fair enough," said Dante. He was looking to the caves ahead and hearing a lot of grunting. He hoped the next circle wasn't as weird or smelly as the last. It wasn't as smelly, but it was only marginally less weird. There, groups of people, slick with sweat, pushed large stones around in a circle before crashing into other people, pushing stones in the opposite direction. Every time they clashed, they would yell either, "Why do you hoard?" or "Why do you waste?" before turning around and starting the process all over again. "Let me guess," Dante mused. "These are the people who hoarded and wasted things in their lives?" "Hey, look at you. First try even," Virgil said. "Oh, and I see you looking around for people. Anyone you might know in the circle is so changed by their sin that they're now unrecognizable, even to themselves." Dante thought it over. "Oh, bummer. Well, I would say I'm playing devil's advocate, but right now that seems a bit too real. But I do have a question. Hoarding and spending, those just seem like reactions to the capricious and unpredictable nature of a person's luck on Earth. So, I don't know. This all seems just harsh." Virgil responded, "Well, as we all know, Dame Fortune's wheel spins, giving some people great things and some people horrible misfortunes, and then reversing them almost as quickly. It's all according to God's will, though, so people shouldn't be too mad or expect to hold on to the things that fortune gives, because they weren't really yours to begin with. This is all in your orientation packet. You know, Dame Fortune sounds a lot like the Roman goddess Fortuna, Dante pushed. Yeah, she does, Virgil said. And speaking of selectively Christianizing parts of Greco-Roman mythology, here we are at the River Styx. Dante would have been morbidly fascinated by it all, if not for the new stench. There, in the mud of the wide river, Styx, were countless people, and it was a battle royale. People were throwing elbows, kicking each other, biting. Basically, they were fighting dirty. And they were also literally dirty because they were waist deep in muck. And it stunk. No one was really winning, because the harder they fought, the more intense everyone else became too, which only increased their rage, keeping them in a perpetual fight. Wrath? Dante asked. Yeah, Virgil said, that was kind of an easy one. But there's a secret hidden sin in Circle 5, in that they are actually hidden underneath the water, in the muck of the river Styx. The people forever drowning in stinky slime are those that muttered and sulked during their time on Earth, sullen, not welcoming the light of the sun that may or may not represent divine illumination, and so they're now forever swallowing slime while the wrathful fight around them. Ugh, Dante said. That's pretty rough. Yeah, well, Virgil said, motioning all around them. Hell. Anyway, I'll call a boat. Virgil motioned, and the flame shot up from the tower next to them. Across the water, well, the muck where people were constantly fighting, another flame shot up in response. Within seconds, the boat sped across the massive fight club, knocking fighters out of the way. The ferryman, Phlegius, was pretty happy until he saw Dante. Oh, it's you guys. You know, we're all pretty cheesed about you bringing a breather down here, Virgil. Not cool, the ferryman said. Not this again, Virgil defended. Look, it wasn't my call, okay? If you have a problem, you need to take it upstairs. Are you going to let us pass? The ferryman sighed. Yeah, just be quick about it. As they crossed Styx, some of the fighters moved out of the way, while others didn't. The ferryman didn't really care. Wait a second, Dante said. I know that guy. He died a few years back. He was a jerk. Virgil looked around the fifth circle of hell. Oh, really a jerk? Who would have thought? He replied. Yeah, mind if we pull over so I can gloat a little bit? Dante said. Is that, sinful? No, Virgil said. In fact, the poem seems to encourage disdain and condemnation for the people in hell, so, go nuts. And Dante did, insulting his acquaintance a lot, capping it off with a wish that the man be dragged down into the swamp and beaten mercilessly. Virgil shrugged. Why not? The wrathful man, the one that had died a few years back, whose name was Filippo Argenti, his eyes widened as he realized he was surrounded by other wrathful shades. They all jumped on him at once and tore him to pieces in the swamp. And Dante said, to this day, he praises and thanks God for this stomach-turning little development. The capital city of hell grew in front of them as they arrived on the other side of the river Styx. And yes, apparently hell has a capital, and it's named Dis, D-I-S, which, if you say it fast enough, just sounds like you're saying Dis, the capital of hell. It was made of red iron, colored so by the near ceaseless hellfire coursing through it. And if you're trying to make a mental picture, I'm picturing the fire-red charcoal scenes of Mordor. Anyway, the ferryman, very happy to have Dante out of his boat, dropped the pair off on the other side of the river. I like to think of the ferryman sitting back in his boat, plugging his phone back in, and hanging out on Twitter before his next passenger came. The pair approached the iron gates of Dis, and Virgil was, once again, challenged. This time, fallen angels, the ones who had rebelled against God and been cast out with Satan, were manning the walls. Before you say it, Virgil, he's not coming in, one stated flatly. You guys too? Virgil said. I have orders from heaven that he's allowed in, so let us in. Oh, cool, the fallen angel said, and then promptly did absolutely nothing. So you're gonna let us through? Virgil said. No, they said. Virgil, we're fallen angels, so we're not big on following orders from heaven. It's like our defining characteristic. Human reason can only get you so far in your fight against evil. Oh, so we're just spelling out the subtext of this whole interaction? Virgil asked. Okay, well, if you want someone to come down here for proof, fine. You asked for it. Wait, what is he doing? One of the fallen angels asked. I think he's praying, Dante said. When Virgil was finished praying, Essentially talking to the fallen angels manager, he turned to Dante, saying that their passage forward would be granted, and evil couldn't overcome it, no matter how dark things seemed at times, because God was more powerful than all of this, and he's watching over it. Oh, okay, Dante said. Is that symbolism? Pretty much constantly, Virgil said, and the pair sat down and waited for their prayers to be answered. Still sitting outside the gates of Dis, they began to hear flapping. Dante had not exactly been enjoying his time in hell, but now the color had drained from his face. This was all very messed up, and he now had fallen angels threatening his life. But it was about to get so much worse. Hey, Dante and Virgil heard from the tower above them. The guys inside said they don't want you hanging around the gate anymore, so clear out, the creature said. Dante looked upward, horrified. The most common description of the creatures, called Furies, are just scary women with wings. They're from Greek mythology. When the fallen angels had seen the pair was basically ignoring them, they called in the big guns, because the capital of hell had a bouncer, and her name was Medusa. Hey, Virgil said, turning to Dante. So, since you're still alive, you can die. Very key detail that I'm just bringing up right now. Worse yet, you can turn into stone, so get those eyes closed. Medusa was coming. The monster from Greek mythology, with snakes for hair, who could turn people to stone with a glance. And, unfortunately for Dante, he was people. Dante, eyes closed, felt Virgil's arm wrap around his head, and the poet say that no matter what happened, he should not open his eyes. Make Medusa pry them open. He looked to the sky. Where was their help? Then, his eyes closed and maybe covered by a ghost arm, Dante heard it. A crack of lightning, screaming, a crash, more screaming, but this time it was Virgil. Dante started panicking until he heard Virgil talking about how cool that was. Wow, Virgil said. Can you believe that? That was so cool. What? What was cool? Dante said, opening his eyes. Oh no, Dante, your eyes were closed. Oh, you missed it. Missed what? What happened? Dante said. Okay, so Medusa was getting close. And then this glowing guy comes walking across sticks, like a boss. All the wrath people running away from him like frogs, but he doesn't care. He's just looking straight ahead of him. The Furies flew away when they saw him, but Medusa was slower. He got close to her, waved his hand, and it was like he punted Medusa. She's probably still falling. Anyway, he walked right up to the gate, and with one touch, it burst open, sending those fallen angels on the other side flying too. Then the guy nods at me and just takes off. It was amazing. Anyway, too bad you had your eyes closed. Well, Virgil motioned to the open gate of Dis. Shall we? It was still miles to the city, and as soon as they were inside the gate, Dante saw that they were in a field, full of tombs, and screaming. Each tomb sat open and was treated like a big stone stockpot, with a ring of fire around it, heating it up to the very apparent displeasure of the person inside. Before you ask, Virgil said, these are heretics, so people who profess belief, but reject certain doctrines or articles of faith. Everyone here is heated to the level of their dissent. Wow, that's dark, Dante said. No, it's actually really light, Virgil said, because of the fire. But yeah, no, it's dark stuff. Hey, we haven't played the symbolism game in a while. Oh yeah, what do the tombs mean? Dante said. Well, heresy represents death of the soul, so these people are in death after death. On Judgment Day, those lids will be put on and sealed forever. This was another spot where Dante saw someone he knew. Apparently pride is a sin, but placing your political enemies in hell after their death is completely cool. We're not going to go into it, but I just saved you about 135 lines of late medieval Florentine politics. They were able to circle around the city altogether, and soon they found their way to the inner edges of Circle 6. They looked down into the stinking, fiery darkness of the next 3 circles. The next 3 were actually the worst of them. The sins of the she-wolf, incontinence, were over. It was now time for the sins of violence, the sins of the lion, and the sins of fraudulence, the sins of the leopard. They descended into the valley. Virgil was saying something about the valley being made after the earthquake struck after Christ died, but Dante couldn't quite get over the sound of a cow bellowing somewhere among the rocks. Virgil could see that he was distracted and said that it was the Minotaur. No big deal, though. They probably wouldn't even see him. You mean that Minotaur right there? Dante said, pointing to the half-man, half-bull that had turned the corner right in front of them. It looked down at the pair, snorted, and lowered its head to charge. That's where we're going to leave it this time. Next time, we'll be wrapping up Dante's tour of hell. And now it's time for the best of the worst. This time, on the best of the worst, it's the Fisherman. He's an Aquaman villain because of course he's an Aquaman villain. He's the Fisherman. And Aquaman is Aquaman. It basically writes itself. No one has ever bothered to write a real name for the Fisherman or elaborate on how he made his jump from hobbyist fisherman to professional criminal fisherman, or who's funding his hovercraft fishing boat or submarine. It's not him because he doesn't fence any of his stolen goods from his heists. He just hangs them on his wall, like one would do with a prized fish they caught. Yeah, Fisherman commits to the costume in private and in public. In public, he'll fly around the city in his hovercraft, pulling jewelry off people and getting anything else readily available. If you're thinking that most valuables are secured inside, well, the Fisherman has thought of that too. One of his hooks conceals a vacuum to bust in the door and suck up all the money inside. And if you're wondering, yes, he'll just put all that money on a shelf that says, "Money I stole from the paint company I robbed," which is not only wasteful, but extremely self-incriminating if he gets caught. And he does get caught. All the time. Which leads to many, many hook and net puns. Thank you, 1960s comics. The last time Aquaman faced off against him, he was beaten 3 times by the Fisherman in a single issue, after Aquaman smacked Aqualad around. Aqualad was his child sidekick, because I guess you can get owned by the villain 3 times and beat up a kid and still be considered the hero. Aqualad got the last laugh, though, and rescued Aquaman from the Fisherman, before Aquaman stopped the Fisherman by punching him a lot in the face until he went unconscious. It wasn't related to fish or water at all. I guess they really need to wrap up that issue. And if you're wondering, the pun was that the Fisherman caught Aquaman's fists. Yeah, I don't think Aquaman was ever really known for his wit. Anyway, the Fisherman's also involved on a villain island team-up. He got a new look, too. In that, he's no longer some guy in a frog suit, or a normal person in a villain mask and a fishing hat. He's this muscular supervillain in a skin-tight purple suit. He basically looks like a much more jacked version of Deadpool, if Deadpool wore fishing waders and a tackle belt, and was hooking heroes with a fishing pole. I'm completely serious, you have to see this. I linked pictures of all the different versions of the Fisherman in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks to finish up the story of Dante's Inferno. Today's episode was written by me, Jason Weiser, and edited and produced by Carissa Weiser. Our theme song is by Breakmaster Cylinder. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.